Hey everyone, and welcome back to Big Blonde and Beautiful, the podcast. If you're new here, my name's Kara Howie, and each week I pick a movie and I talk about a fat character and fat representation, whether or not it's positive or negative. This week I've chosen to focus on Connie from the movie Mona Lisa Smile, which I love this movie, but as we're going to get into later, Connie, let me just give you a synopsis. If you haven't watched the movie, you can pause here, go watch it, and come back, or you can just listen to the podcast without watching it. That's fine too. The synopsis: Katherine Watson, who's played by Julia Roberts, is a recent UCLA graduate hired to teach art history at the prestigious all female Wellesley College in 1953. Determined to confront the outdated morals of society and the institution that embraces them, Catherine inspires her traditional students, including Betty and Joan, to challenge the lives they are expected to lead. And a little bit of character description for Connie. Connie is a people pleaser with a soft spot for romance. The damsel in distress archetype gets lost in the daydream of one day and the melody of her cello. Her feelings are worn on her sleeve, passive emotions that are reliant on the opinion of others. Under the threat of conflict or pain, her first instinct is to leave and avoid it. She is a gentle soul with a loud screaming heart and is ready to give it to anyone who would show her the same passion and interests. If you want to whip out your phone, which you're probably listening to this on if you're driving, please don't do that. Just listen. So Connie is played by Jennifer Goodwin, which I love Jennifer Goodwin. I was obsessed with Once Upon a Time for a while. And Ramona and Beezus. I freaking loved that movie. I own it now as an adult and I still watch it. Love her. But the character of Connie, it seems is meant to be a fat character. And Jennifer Goodwin is not fat. And I don't believe that she's ever been fat from my knowledge. Connie's a very self conscious person. She doesn't have a lot of self respect or self esteem, which is unfortunate because she's absolutely gorgeous. And I think the reason why they cast Jennifer Goodwin is just because she's not a complete stick. She does have some round cheeks, but that's really it. And that's not fat at all. Now, I'm not really sure if they flat out call Connie fat, but they definitely, especially Betty, who's a pill, oof, she definitely talks about how Connie needs to be realistic about her standards and with men because of her appearance, which is absolutely ridiculous. You should not lower your standards just because you aren't what society deems to be beautiful. And I also have to think I should have done research before the show on beauty standards of the 1950s because this does take place in 1953. So maybe in 1953 her body type would have been considered plus size, but we also have to recognize that just because the movie is taking place in 1953, we're releasing this movie in the early 2000s, 2003 to be exact. And fat means something very different now, and I think you have to find a balance between the historically accurate depiction of fatness and the modern depiction, the modern body, I guess I would say. And no offense to Jennifer Goodwin, but she ain't it. She is skinny. Skinny, skinny. It's like when they wanted us to believe that DJ was fat, but all she had was a little bit of cheeks. Like, no, she's not. We see her put down a lot, as I said earlier, especially by her so called friend Betty, which, to be honest, Betty's not a great friend. I know that she has her own thing she's dealing with, but I would not want to be her friend. She makes Connie feel awful all the time. So, Betty is getting married, and it's a big to do. And apparently, if you're a woman, you're not supposed to attend an event alone in the 1950s, which Sounds pretty accurate. So Betty decides that as a favor, she will set up Connie with her cousin Charlie. When the girls, this is before the wedding, when the girls are sitting in common room, they're talking about how Connie's gonna be with Charlie for the wedding and how maybe something will come of it. And Betty's says, "Don't get her hopes up," or "Don't be ridiculous." And Connie says something that's just heartbreaking. She's like, "Maybe someday someone will be interested." And I'm like, don't talk about yourself like that. Ugh, it is very heartbreaking, even though she isn't a fat character, to just see any woman feel that little about themselves. It, it's hard to watch. So at Betty's wedding, Charlie and Connie are dancing. And then Connie starts to leave. She's like, "Thanks for the dance." And she starts to go her separate ways. And Charlie asks, wait, is this the brush off? And Connie goes, "You don't have to pretend. Like, I know that this was just a favor that Betty was doing for me." And Charlie says, "The favor was for me. I asked Betty because I'm interested in you." And Connie's shocked. Betty has, in this movie, it happens a few times where she tells Connie information that's not accurate to basically make Connie feel bad about herself. So Connie and Charlie, they start seeing each other. I don't know if they're officially dating, but they're having fun. And so Charlie takes Connie to the Cape for the weekend, I believe. And they're just, like I said, having fun. They go to have a meal, and he becomes odd because someone's there that he recognizes and he doesn't want them to see him. And they don't really give us any context at that point as to why. So they end up eating somewhere separate, and then cut to a scene where the girls are swimming and they're talking about how Connie went on this date to the Cape. Charlie took her there. And Betty, of course, has to add in her 2 cents and talk about how, oh, he takes girls there to hide them. And with what had happened with the meal, with him being super paranoid, in Connie's brain, it checks out that he's hiding her because he's ashamed of how she looks. Which, if anyone's ever doing that, you shouldn't feel bad. You should feel angry that they think that little of you to do that to you. But in Connie fashion, she feels bad about herself. Then, I don't know if it's later or if it's in the same scene, it's brought up that Charlie was practically engaged to this one woman, which I don't remember her name. And so apparently the people that he was hiding from were her parents. So, and Betty's telling Connie this. So Connie believes that he's hiding her and also is supposed to marry this girl. So Connie cuts contact with him. And when she sees him at a party, he reveals to her that they hadn't been together for at least a year. And that the only reason that he was at that party with someone else was because Connie had been blowing him off and not talking to him. Which is unfortunate because I really like Charlie. I like Charlie and Connie. They're sweet together. And he really seems to like her despite the fact that people are like, "Oh no, she's not the standard of beauty." Connie is absolutely devastated. She's seen like smoking a cigarette, and Betty comes out there and she basically tells Betty that he's not with anyone. He's not promised to marry someone. And Betty's like, "Oh, I didn't know, they were so on and off." And Connie says, "No, apparently they've been off for a while." Meaning, like, Betty's nosy. There's no way that she did not know. about that. And then Connie says, even if they were still together, even if he was hiding me, why couldn't you just let me have this? Why couldn't you just let me be happy? And I think it's because Betty's unhappy, but still, it really sucks that all that happened. But luckily, Connie is bold and she decides to go to Charlie's dorm, and they basically get back together and they end up being a couple. And it is just really sweet. Now, since this is another segment of Thick or Stick, I'm definitely giving her a stick. She's probably the smallest character for Thick or Stick that we've had so far. So, and then with that being said, when it comes to negative or positive representation, I automatically give these a negative because you're not fat. This character's not fat. The only reason that we infer that they are fat is usually because they are made fun of or made to feel less than because of their appearance or their size. So she definitely isn't fat, and it's negative representation for me. Anyway, this was kind of a shorter episode since the movie doesn't really focus on Connie too much. It's more focused on Betty and Catherine. Thank you all for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on TikTok at bbb.thepodcast and Instagram at bbb.podcast. You can also follow me, your host, at Carolina Howie on Instagram. And please, wherever you're listening to this, rate us 5 stars, give us a like, give us a share, tell people about it. I would really appreciate it. And until next week, stay fat and fabulous. Bye.